The White House is running so smoothly, so smoothly. And believe me, I and we inherited one big mess.
President Trump at his rally Saturday pushing back on reports his White House is in disarray. And it's time now for our Sunday group. GOP strategist Karl Rove, Mo Elleithee of Georgetown University's Institute of Politics and Public Service, Charles Lane of the Washington Post, and Kimberley Strassel from the Wall Street Journal. So, Karl, which better describes Donald Trump's first month in office, chaos or a fine-tuned machine?
I would lean more towards the former than the latter, but let's give him credit. On substance, off to a strong start. Cabinet that's turning out to be impressive, moving ahead with some regulatory changes to Obamacare, Republicans on the Hill beginning to wrangle over what legislation to repeal it, tax reform, again, wrangling, moving it forward.
So why chaos?
Well, because the process, we saw that in the immigration executive order. They don't have a process in place that is collaborative, that puts cabinet secretaries with disagreements over White House policy in front of the president to make their argument. They were rushed. They did it by using congressional staffers who didn't tell their bosses, and as a result, they're going to have a redo. But you know, we got to give him credit. He's moving forward in a lot of ways. Spectacle, boy, off the charts. I mean, early morning tweets, controversies about Meryl Streep's ability to act, and then that blockbuster of a news conference. I mean, the whole purpose of which was to allow him to vent at the media. He looked like Pharaoh with the whip in hand, whipping those slaves, getting them to build the pyramids. I mean, he was unhappy. But what I really worry about is the narrative, and Rush touched on this.
Okay, let me bring Mo in. Same question, report card on President Trump's first month.
Yeah, look, generally not good, right? And I think he's learning that he cannot govern the way he campaigned because there are other players here. He can't just go out there and do what he wants to do, and there are other players here. But having said that, let's remember this. He got about 46% of the vote, right? About 38 to 41%. Consistently throughout, since the day he announced he was running for president through today, are with him. They're not going to move. And Rush talked about them. They're going to stick with him. For them, he's doing a great job. For them, he's moving with speed. He's poking his finger in the eye of the establishment. Whether or not he actually produces doesn't really matter because he's the guy who's going to keep doing that. But now you got about 5 to 8% of Trump persuadable voters, and they're watching this spectacle. And I'm not sure what they are seeing. They are not seeing a domestic agenda moving forward. They are not seeing a guy who is actually fighting for them when he's mired by conflict of interest stories every single day. Those are the people to watch.
There is another aspect to this first month, and that is the pushback by the establishment, various sources, and we ask you for questions for the panel, and we got a lot like this, a tweet from George who writes, what other president has faced as much resistance in their first month in office? Where did the honeymoon go? And the question I guess I have for Kim is, when you look at all of the damaging leaks from the intel community or the FBI, when you look at the kind of rock-solid obstruction from Democrats, when you look at a lot of negative stories from the media, does George have a point?
Yes, he has an absolute point. It's remarkable that Donald Trump has accomplished what he has. I mean, you were talking about this earlier about asking Rush whether or not there was some sort of conspiracy within the administration. I don't know if you need to go that far, but it is very clear.
Well, he's a conspiracy within the government. He's saying
within the government,
the deep
bureaucrats.
state.
Well, look, I mean, you had Sally Yates. She refused to implement.
The acting attorney general.
Acting attorney general, who had to be fired because she would not go and defend the immigration order. This week, Scott Pruitt was confirmed, but not before we saw a remarkable display of EPA employees calling their own senators and demanding that he not be confirmed and put into office. There clearly is a significant part of the bureaucracy that's actively working against him. And, you know, the bigger story in my mind about Michael Flynn and this resignation was who was behind the orchestrated takedown of this guy. Somebody clearly in the intelligence community.
Chuck, would you agree that this president is facing much stronger headwinds, much stronger, more concerted opposition than previous presidents a month in?
Yes, for two different reasons. Let's just look at the last time we had a first term, first month. It was Barack Obama in 2009. The country was in the middle of an economic crisis, that seemed to cry out for rapid action from Washington on the one hand, and on the other hand, he had 60 votes in the Senate. So you really couldn't stop him. So there was a lot less resistance for those very good reasons. But then over here...
But you also didn't get the resistance from the news media. Some would say that it was very compliant, and you certainly didn't get resistance from the deep state. I'm now loving the expression.
You sure got a lot of resistance from the Republicans. But let me make my second point. Of course, you're getting resistance from all these sort of establishment agencies, if you like, because Donald Trump himself came in promising to attack them, promising to disrupt them, promising to take them down. What does he expect them to do? Just stand back and let him, destroy their influence and their power? Of course, there's going to be resistance, but it's not as if he avoids provocation of these people, particularly the media, as you have been pointing out. He relishes this combat. A lot of what he's complaining about as resistance and so forth is resistance that he himself is provoking for the very political reasons that Mo is describing. For his base, a battle with the media is wonderful. It's almost as good as actual policy change because it confirms their worldview, it confirms their view of what's wrong with the country, and it's terrific politics.
Okay, we have to take a break here, panel.